The music was too loud, the drinks were too strong, and my wife Sloane was performing again. I stood in the corner of Derek Prentiss's yacht club mansion, nursing a beer that had gone warm 20 minutes ago, watching her work the room like she was campaigning for mayor of everyone's bedroom. "Ethan, you're being antisocial again," Chelsea Martinez said, sliding up beside me with that fake smile she'd perfected in law school alongside Sloane. "Your wife is the life of the party, as usual." I took a sip of warm beer and watched Sloane throw her head back, laughing at something Mike Thompson had whispered in her ear. Her hand lingered on his arm just a beat too long. "Yeah, she's something else." For months, I'd been swallowing these moments like bitter medicine, the jokes that weren't really jokes, the comments that cut just deep enough to draw blood but stayed wrapped in enough humor that calling them out made me look like the bad guy. "I could get any man into bed," she'd said last week at dinner with friends, tossing her blonde hair like she was in a shampoo commercial. "Every guy wants me. You should be grateful I'm still with you, Ethan." When I'd looked uncomfortable, she'd laughed louder. "You should carry me in your arms more, kiss me like you mean it, treat me like the prize I am, because I could leave you whenever I want." I'd tried to brush it off, told myself she was insecure, craving attention, just being dramatic, but the comments kept coming, each one chipping away at something quiet and important inside me, respect. "She's had a lot to drink tonight," Chelsea continued, but her tone suggested she was fishing for drama, not offering sympathy. Across the room, Sloane was now holding court near the fireplace, surrounded by half the yacht club's membership. Derek Prentiss, our host and the kind of guy who wore boat shoes to grocery stores, was hanging on her every word. His wife was notably absent tonight, something about visiting her mother. "Oh, please," Sloane's voice suddenly cut through the music and conversation like a knife. She was gesturing wildly with her wine glass, and I could see from here that it wasn't her first, or second. "You want to know a secret?" The group around her leaned in, and I felt my stomach drop. I knew that tone. That was her watch me burn everything down for attention voice. "All the men in this room have tasted me," she announced, loud enough to make conversation stop in a 10-foot radius. "Every single one of them has had a chance. And imagine, I'm still with him." She pointed directly at me with a grin that felt like a public execution. I could have picked any of them. I could be with someone else right now, someone who appreciates what they have. But I'm still here with boring old Ethan. You should all thank me for my loyalty. The room went silent, except for the music, which suddenly seemed obscenely cheerful. People shifted uncomfortably, some looking at their shoes, others glancing between Sloane and me like they were watching a car accident in slow motion. Chelsea sucked in a breath beside me. "Oh, shit." But I felt something strange. Clarity. Not jealousy, not rage, just crystal clear understanding. I saw it all at once. The constant humiliation, the entitlement, the way she used her own betrayal, real or implied, as a weapon to control me. The way she'd turned our marriage into performance art where I was always the punchline. I set my beer down on the nearest table, the glass making a sharp clink that somehow carried in the silence. Then I walked across the room, every eye following me, until I was standing directly in front of my wife. "You're absolutely right, Sloane," I said, my voice carrying easily in the quiet. "That's going to help a lot during the divorce." Her smile collapsed like a house of cards. The wine glass trembled in her hand. "What? No, I was joking." "Jokes don't sound like confessions," I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. "If you've cheated this much, or you want people to believe you have, then we're done. I don't need a wife who brags about being available to everyone except her husband." Her face went white. "Stop, please. You're embarrassing me." I almost laughed. "I'm embarrassing you?" I looked around the room at all the faces staring at us. "Lady, you just announced to a room full of people that you've slept with half of them. I'm not the one who should be embarrassed here." "It was a joke," she hissed, but her voice cracked. "No," I said quietly, but still loud enough for the room to hear. "A joke is funny. What you just did was cruel. And if it's true, then you're a cheater. If it's not true, then you're someone who thinks humiliating her husband is entertainment. Either way, I'm done." Mike Thompson stepped forward, his face flushed with alcohol and something that might have been guilt. "Hey man, she didn't mean anything by it. Sloane's just had a few drinks." I turned to look at him, really look at him. "Mike, were you one of the men she was talking about?" His mouth opened and closed like a fish. That was answer enough. Derek Prentiss cleared his throat. "Ethan, maybe we should all calm down." "Derek," I interrupted. "You're hosting this party in your mansion while your wife is conveniently out of town. You've been hanging on my wife's every word all night. So let me ask you the same question. Were you one of them?" Derek's tan face went red, then pale. He didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. I nodded slowly, pieces clicking into place. Right. Well, this has been educational. I turned back to Sloane, who was now crying mascara down her cheeks. I'll be calling my lawyer first thing Monday morning. You can stay here tonight. I'm sure one of your many admirers will give you a ride home. Hell, maybe you can finally stop pretending and pick one of them. Ethan, please, she whispered. Don't do this. Not here. You chose here, I said simply. You made this public. You wanted an audience for your little performance. Well, congratulations. You got one. I walked toward the door, and the crowd parted like the Red Sea. Behind me, I could hear Sloane starting to sob, and Chelsea's voice trying to comfort her. Someone turned the music back up, but it couldn't quite cover the whispered conversations that were already starting. As I reached the front door, I heard Derek's voice. Sloane, maybe you should... I didn't wait to hear the rest. I stepped out into the cool Maine evening, breathing in salt air and freedom. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe properly. My phone buzzed as I reached my truck. A text from Sloane. Please come back. We can fix this. I deleted it without responding and drove home to our empty house, which I realized was about to become just my house. I woke up Monday morning to an empty bed and 17 missed calls from Sloane. The house felt different, quieter, but not in a lonely way, more like the silence after a storm passes. My coffee was actually hot for once, since I didn't have to wait for Sloane to finish her elaborate morning routine. I was an engineering consultant, which meant I could work from home most days, but it also meant I'd spent the last 2 years watching my wife treat our house like a hotel where she occasionally slept between social events. The first call I made was to Tom Bradley, a divorce attorney I'd met through work. We'd grabbed beers a few times, and he'd mentioned that half his clients wished they'd started documenting problems earlier. Ethan. Tom's voice was professional, but warm when he picked up. I heard there was some excitement at the yacht club Saturday night. Word traveled fast in our little coastal Maine town. You could say that. Want to come in this afternoon? We should talk about your options. I'll be there at 2. The second call was to my buddy Hal Morrison, who ran a small security company and owed me a favor from when I'd helped design his office building's electrical system. You need what? Hal's gravelly voice carried the sound of someone who'd smoked too many cigarettes and worked too many long days. Doorbell camera, maybe something for the driveway. All legal, all on my own property. This about Sloane? Yeah. I'll be over in an hour. And Ethan? Good for you, man. That woman's been walking all over you for years. While I waited for Hal, I did something I probably should have done months ago. I went through our financial records. What I found made my stomach turn. Expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, charged to our joint credit card, hotel rooms in Portland on days when Sloane claimed she was working late, spa treatments, shopping trips, even what looked like men's clothing purchases from high-end stores. But the real kicker was a series of payments to something called Coastal Consulting Services. $500 here, $800 there, always with a note about legal research or case preparation. I'd never heard of Coastal Consulting Services. A quick Google search revealed it was Derek Prentiss's side business. The same Derek who'd turned red as a lobster when I'd confronted him Saturday night. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was paying her lover with our money and calling it business expenses. Hal showed up with a van full of equipment and a grim expression. You look like someone ran over your dog. Worse, I think my wife's been stealing from me to pay for her affair. Hal whistled low. Jesus, Ethan, how long's this been going on? Based on these receipts? At least 6 months, maybe longer. We spent the morning installing cameras. One at the front door, one covering the driveway, one at the back entrance. All perfectly legal since it was my house too. These'll send alerts to your phone, Hal explained, showing me the app. Motion detection, night vision, the works. And they store everything in the cloud, so even if someone tries to destroy them, you'll have the footage. Just as Hal was packing up his tools, my phone buzzed with the first alert. Sloane's BMW was pulling into our driveway. She looked like hell. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her makeup was smeared, and she was wearing the same dress from Saturday night. She fumbled with her keys at the front door for a full minute before getting it open. Ethan, she called out as she stumbled inside. Are you here? We need to talk. I came out of the kitchen where I'd been reviewing more financial records. We don't need to do anything, Sloane. You need to pack a bag and find somewhere else to stay. She looked around the room, noticing the camera by the front door for the first time. What is that? Security system. I'm protecting my assets now. Your assets? Her voice rose. This is my house too. Is it? Because according to these credit card statements, you've been spending our money on hotel rooms with Derek Prentiss. I held up the printed receipts. Coastal Consulting Services? Really? That's what you're calling it? Her face went white. You went through my things? I went through our things, our joint accounts that you've been raiding to fund your affair. I spread the papers on the coffee table. 6 months of payments to Derek's fake consulting company, hotel rooms, dinners. You even bought him a watch with our credit card. Sloane sat down heavily on the couch, her hands shaking. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're cheating on me, you're stealing from me to pay for it, and then you had the balls to announce it to half the town at a party. I sat down across from her, but not close enough to touch. The only thing I don't understand is why you thought I'd just take it forever. Because you love me, she whispered. I did love you, past tense. But love doesn't mean being a doormat, Sloane. It doesn't mean letting someone humiliate you in public and steal from you in private. She started crying then, the kind of ugly crying that smears makeup and makes your nose run. I can explain everything. Derek and I, we're just friends. The consulting thing is real. He's been helping me with some cases. What cases? She opened her mouth, then closed it. I can't discuss client confidentiality. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Right. Client confidentiality. Is that what you call it when you're in hotel rooms together? You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference. I stood up. I have an appointment with my lawyer this afternoon. You have until I get back to pack whatever you need and get out. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, Sloane. Maybe Derek has room at his place. Maybe Chelsea will let you crash on her couch. Maybe one of all those men who've tasted you will take you in. I headed toward the door. But you're not staying here. You can't just throw me out. I have rights. You're right. You do have rights, and I'm exercising mine. I paused at the door. The cameras are recording everything, by the way, so if anything goes missing or gets damaged while I'm gone, I'll have evidence. I left her sitting on our couch, crying into her hands. Part of me felt bad for her, the part that remembered how we'd met, how happy we'd been in the beginning. But that part was getting smaller every minute. At Tom Bradley's office, I laid out everything, the public humiliation, the financial records, the obvious affair. Tom reviewed the documents with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen this story 100 times before. This is actually pretty straightforward, Ethan. Maine is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery and financial misconduct can definitely affect asset division. What about the house? You bought it before the marriage, right? With your own money? Yeah. She moved in after we got married, but the deed's in my name. Good. That makes things easier. The consulting payments to Derek's company. That's marital funds used for an extramarital affair. We can definitely recover that money. How long will this take? If she doesn't contest it? 6 months, maybe less. If she fights it? Tom shrugged. Could be longer. But honestly, with this evidence, I don't think she'll want to drag it out. The public humiliation alone will make her want to settle quickly. When I got home, Sloane's car was gone. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Staying at Chelsea's. Please don't do this. We can work it out. I love you. I crumpled up the note and threw it away. Then I checked the camera footage on my phone. She'd taken 2 suitcases and what looked like her jewelry box, but she hadn't touched anything else. No vindictive destruction, no theft. Maybe she wasn't completely gone yet. My phone rang. Chelsea Martinez. Ethan, you need to stop this, she said without preamble. Sloane is devastated. She made a mistake, but she doesn't deserve to have her life destroyed. Chelsea, were you covering for her? A pause. What do you mean? The affair. Did you know about Derek? Another pause. Longer this time. Sloane's my best friend. That's not an answer. She needed someone to talk to. She was confused. She didn't know what she wanted. I hung up on her. So Chelsea had known. Probably helped cover for Sloane, maybe even provided alibis. The betrayal kept expanding like ripples in a pond. That night, I ate dinner in peace for the first time in months. No criticism of my cooking, no complaints about my table manners, no passive-aggressive comments about my career or my clothes or my friends. It was the best meal I'd had in years. Tuesday morning brought a new kind of drama. I was working in my home office when my phone started buzzing with notifications from the doorbell camera. A silver Mercedes was pulling into my driveway, Derek Prentiss's car. He got out wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month, his face set in what I assumed he thought was an intimidating expression. Derek was the kind of guy who'd inherited his father's yacht brokerage and spent his life convincing himself that made him self-made. I opened the door before he could knock. We need to talk, he said, trying to push past me into the house. I didn't move. No, we don't. Look, this thing with Sloane, it's not what you think. Really? What is it then? Derek shifted uncomfortably. He was used to being the biggest fish in small ponds, but he'd never had to face an angry husband before. She came to me for business advice. The consulting payments are legitimate. What kind of business advice requires hotel rooms, Derek? His tanned face flushed. We're friends. Sometimes we discuss things over dinner. In hotel rooms. She wanted privacy. She was thinking about leaving her law firm, starting her own practice. She didn't want word getting back to her partners. I had to admire his commitment to the lie, even if it was terrible. So you were helping her plan a career change by sleeping with her. We never... He stopped, realizing he was digging himself deeper. Derek, I've got credit card receipts showing my wife paying your fake consulting company thousands of dollars. I've got hotel charges on days when she told me she was working late. And I've got a room full of witnesses who heard her announce that she'd been with half the men in town. I leaned against the doorframe. The only question is whether you want this to stay between us or become a public spectacle. What do you want? I want you to stay away from my wife. I want you to return every penny she paid your consulting company, and I want you to disappear from our lives. And if I don't? I pulled out my phone and showed him the doorbell camera app. Then I start sharing footage of you coming to my house to threaten me. I send copies of all those consulting payments to the yacht club board. I'm sure they'd be interested to know how you conduct business. And I make sure everyone in town knows exactly what kind of man you are. Derek's face went through several colors before settling on pale gray. You can't prove anything. I don't have to prove anything, Derek. I just have to make enough people suspicious. How's that going to affect your business when people start wondering if they can trust you? How's your wife going to react when she finds out why you were so eager to host parties while she was out of town? That hit home. Derek's wife came from old money, the kind of family that could make or break a yacht broker's reputation with a few well-placed words. This is extortion, he said weakly. No, this is consequences. You helped destroy my marriage, and now you get to deal with the fallout. I stepped back into the house. You've got 48 hours to return the money. After that, I start making phone calls. I closed the door in his face and watched through the camera as he sat in his car for 5 minutes, probably trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. 20 minutes later, Sloane called. Derek says you threatened him. Derek's a liar and a thief, but you already know that. Ethan, please, can we just sit down and talk like adults? We tried that, Sloane. Remember? For months, I tried to talk to you about the way you were treating me. You laughed it off, told me I was being sensitive, made more jokes at my expense. I was wrong. I know that now, but we can fix this. No, we can't. You cheated on me, stole from me, and humiliated me in public. Those aren't things you fix. They're things you live with. What about for better or worse? What about till death do us part? I almost laughed. What about forsaking all others? What about honor and cherish? You broke those vows first, Sloane. She was quiet for a long moment. What do you want me to do? I want you to sign the divorce papers when they're ready. I want you to return the money you stole. And I want you to stop pretending you're the victim here. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen, and now we both have to deal with it. That afternoon, I got a call from Tom Bradley. Derek Prentiss's lawyer called me, he said. Apparently his client is willing to return the consulting fees to avoid any legal action. How much? $12,000, plus interest. I whistled. I knew it was bad, but not that bad. It gets better. Prentiss is also willing to sign an affidavit admitting the consulting arrangement was fraudulent and that he had an inappropriate relationship with your wife. Why would he do that? Because his lawyer probably told him that financial fraud is a felony, and sleeping with another man's wife while stealing from him isn't going to play well with a jury. He wants this to go away quietly. Wednesday evening, I was grilling a steak on my back deck when Hal Morrison showed up with a 6-pack of beer and a grim expression. We need to talk, he said, accepting a beer and settling into one of my deck chairs. That seems to be everyone's favorite phrase this week. Sloane came by my office today. I flipped the steak and waited. She wanted to know if the cameras you installed were legal, asked if there was any way to disable them without you knowing. What did you tell her? I told her the cameras were perfectly legal since they're on your property, and that tampering with them would be a crime. Hal took a long pull from his beer. But that's not the interesting part. What's the interesting part? She wasn't alone. Mike Thompson was with her. I set down my spatula. Mike Thompson. My supposed friend Mike Thompson. Yeah, and they seemed real comfortable together. Like holding hands comfortable. The pieces clicked into place. Son of a bitch. It wasn't just Derek. Looks that way, and there's more. Hal pulled out his phone. After they left my office, I followed them. They went to that little motel out on Route 1, stayed for about 2 hours. The steak was burning, but I didn't care anymore. How long has this been going on? I don't know, but I did some digging. Mike's been having money problems. His construction business is barely staying afloat, but he's been paying cash for everything the last few months. Cash he shouldn't have. You think Sloane's been giving him money too? I think your wife's been running a regular charity for down-on-their-luck guys, if you know what I mean. I sat down heavily in the other chair. It was worse than I'd thought. Not just one affair, but multiple. Not just Derek's fake consulting company, but probably other payments I hadn't found yet. There's something else, Hal said quietly. Word around town is that Sloane's been telling people you were abusive, that you controlled her money, isolated her from friends, maybe even hit her. My blood ran cold. That's not true. I know that, and anyone who really knows you knows that. But Sloane's got a lot of friends, and some of them are starting to believe her story. She's trying to flip the narrative, make herself the victim. Exactly. And if she can make it stick, it changes everything about the divorce, maybe even gets you arrested. I thought about the cameras, about the evidence I'd been collecting. Good thing we've got everything documented. Yeah, but Ethan, you need to be careful. A woman who'll sleep around and steal from her husband won't hesitate to lie to the police. And in a he-said-she-said situation, they're usually going to believe the woman. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mike Thompson, who'd been my friend since college, who'd been best man at my wedding, who'd sat in my living room drinking my beer and sympathizing about my marriage problems while he was sleeping with my wife. At 3 a.m, I made a decision. If Sloane wanted to play dirty, I'd show her what dirty really looked like. Thursday morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day becoming a detective. If Sloane was spreading lies about me being abusive, I needed to get ahead of it before those lies became accepted truth. My first stop was the bank, where I requested detailed statements for all our accounts going back 2 years. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. The payments to Derek's consulting company were just the tip of the iceberg. There were cash withdrawals, sometimes $500, sometimes $1,000, almost every week for the past 8 months. Money orders purchased with our joint account funds. Even payments to something called MT Construction Services. MT Mike Thompson. I called Tom Bradley. We need to meet. Today. An hour later, I was sitting in his office with 2 years' worth of financial records spread across his conference table. Jesus Christ, Ethan, Tom said, reviewing the bank statements. She cleaned you out. There's got to be $30,000 here, maybe more. Can we get it back? Some of it. The payments to legitimate businesses for fraudulent services, definitely. The cash withdrawals, he shrugged. Harder to prove, but not impossible. There's more. She's telling people I was abusive. Tom's expression darkened. That's a serious accusation. Have you been contacted by police? Not yet, but it's only a matter of time. We need to file for divorce immediately, today, and we need to request an emergency hearing for asset protection. Tom was already reaching for his phone. I'm also going to recommend you get a restraining order against her. A restraining order? If she's claiming you're abusive, she might try to escalate, file false police reports, claim you threatened her, whatever it takes to gain the upper hand. A restraining order protects you by creating a legal record of who's actually being harassed. That afternoon, I served Sloane with divorce papers at Chelsea's law office. I'd timed it perfectly, right at 5 o'clock when the office would be full of her colleagues. Chelsea tried to block me at the reception desk. You can't just barge in here? I'm serving legal documents to my wife. It's perfectly legal. I held up the envelope. Where is she? She's in a meeting? No, I'm not. Sloane appeared in the hallway, flanked by 2 other lawyers I didn't recognize. She looked like she'd been crying for days. What do you want, Ethan? Divorce papers, I said, handing her the envelope. You're also being sued for return of marital funds fraudulently spent on extramarital affairs. The lobby went dead silent. Every lawyer, paralegal, and secretary in the place was staring at us. Sloane's face went white. You bastard! The papers detail everything. The payments to Derek Prentiss, the cash withdrawals, the money orders to Mike Thompson. I made sure my voice carried. All of it. One of the lawyers next to Sloane, a senior partner based on his expensive suit, cleared his throat. Ms. Martinez, perhaps we should discuss this privately. But I wasn't done. There's also a restraining order in there. You're not allowed within 500 feet of me or my property. All communication goes through lawyers now. You can't do this to me, Sloane hissed. I didn't do this to you. You did this to yourself. I looked around the room at all the shocked faces. Everyone in this room is a lawyer. You all understand contract law, right? Marriage is a contract. When one party breaches that contract through adultery and theft, the other party has remedies. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Sloane? The next time you want to tell people I was abusive, remember that I've got 2 years of financial records showing you stole from me and security footage of your boyfriends coming to my house to threaten me. Abuse works both ways. That evening, Hal called with an update. Mike Thompson's been busy today, he said. Went to 3 different banks, made some large cash deposits. Looks like he's trying to hide money before your lawyers come calling. Can you prove it? Better than that, I've got photos. Hal's background as a private investigator was coming in handy. Want me to follow him tonight? See where he goes? Yeah, but be careful. If he's desperate enough to help Sloane frame me for abuse, he might be dangerous. Don't worry about me. Worry about yourself. Word is, Sloane's meeting with the police tomorrow morning. I spent that night preparing for war. I printed out every financial record, every credit card statement, every piece of evidence I'd collected. I organized it all chronologically, with notes explaining each fraudulent payment. Then I did something that felt strange but necessary. I recorded a video of myself, alone in my house, explaining the situation calmly and rationally. If Sloane was going to claim I was violent or unstable, I wanted evidence of my actual state of mind. Friday morning, Detective Sarah Walsh knocked on my door at 8 a.m. sharp. Mr. Wade, I'm investigating some allegations made by your wife. Can we talk? Detective Walsh was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of no-nonsense attitude that suggested she'd heard every lie in the book. Of course. Would you like coffee? That would be nice. I poured 2 cups and led her to my kitchen table, where I'd laid out all my evidence the night before. Your wife claims you've been financially controlling and emotionally abusive, Detective Walsh said, pulling out a notebook. She says you threatened her and her friends and that you've been stalking her. Detective, I'm going to show you something. I handed her the folder of financial records. These are bank statements showing that my wife stole over $30,000 from our joint accounts to pay for extramarital affairs. Detective Walsh reviewed the documents, her expression growing more skeptical by the page. These consulting payments... Fake. Derek Prentiss's lawyer has already admitted it and agreed to return the money. And these cash withdrawals? Payments to at least one other lover, Mike Thompson. I have photos of him making large cash deposits yesterday, trying to hide the money before my divorce lawyer can recover it. I walked Detective Walsh through everything. The public humiliation at the party, the discovery of the affairs, the evidence of financial fraud. I showed her the security camera footage of Derek coming to my house to threaten me. Mr. Wade, your wife claims you installed these cameras to spy on her. I installed them after I discovered the affairs to protect my property. They're all on my own land, pointing at my own driveway and entrances. Completely legal. Detective Walsh made notes as I talked. After an hour, she closed her notebook. Mr. Wade, I have to ask, have you ever hit your wife, threatened her, restricted her access to money or friends? Never. Detective, until last weekend, I didn't even know she was having affairs. I was trying to save our marriage, not control it. She claims you threw her out of the house with nowhere to go. I asked her to leave after discovering she'd been stealing from me and cheating on me. She's staying with her best friend, who's a lawyer, hardly homeless and helpless. Detective Walsh stood up. Mr. Wade, I'm not going to arrest you today, but I want you to be very careful about any contact with your wife. The restraining order you filed goes both ways. Stay away from her, don't call her, don't text her. I understand. And Mr. Wade, you might want to get a good lawyer. This is going to get messy. After she left, I called Tom Bradley. How did it go? He asked. I think she believed me. The evidence is pretty overwhelming. Good, because I just got a call from Sloane's lawyer. She wants to settle. Already. Apparently, her law firm is not happy about the public scene yesterday, and Derek Prentiss's confession about the consulting fraud makes her position pretty weak. What's she offering? Full return of all fraudulently spent money, plus she'll sign an uncontested divorce agreement. In exchange, you agree not to pursue criminal charges for theft. I thought about it. What about Mike Thompson? We can go after him separately. The evidence is solid. And the abuse allegations? If she signs a statement admitting they were false, we can make them go away. It was tempting. A clean break, money returned, no lengthy court battle. But something about it felt too easy. Tom, what's the catch? No catch that I can see. I think she's scared. The police interview didn't go the way she expected. Her law firm is pressuring her to resolve this quietly, and Derek Prentiss is probably threatening to cut her off if this gets any more public. Give me until Monday to think about it. That weekend, I stayed home and tried to process everything that had happened. A week ago, I'd been married to a woman I thought I loved. Now I was divorcing a stranger who'd stolen from me, cheated on me, and tried to have me arrested. But there was something else, something that had been nagging at me since Detective Walsh's visit. Sloane had given up too easily. She was a fighter, a lawyer trained to never back down from a winnable case. The quick settlement offer felt like a trap. Sunday evening, Hal called with the answer. "You need to see this," he said. "Can I come over?" 20 minutes later, he was sitting at my kitchen table with his laptop open. "I've been keeping an eye on Mike Thompson, like you asked," he said. "Today he met with someone interesting." He turned the laptop toward me. The screen showed a photo of Mike talking to a man I didn't recognize outside a coffee shop. "Who is that?" "Private investigator named Rick Santos, specializes in divorce cases." Hal clicked to the next photo. They talked for about an hour, and then Santos drove straight to Chelsea Martinez's house, where your wife is staying. "They're building a case against me." Gets worse. I ran Santos's background. He's got a reputation for manufacturing evidence. Fake photos, doctored documents, coached witnesses. He's been sanctioned by the court twice, but never disbarred. The settlement offer suddenly made sense. It wasn't surrender. It was bait. Sloane wanted me to think I'd won, so I'd let my guard down. Meanwhile, she was building a case to destroy me completely. "Hal, I need you to keep watching them. All of them. Document everything." "Already on it. But Ethan, you need to be ready. Whatever they're planning, it's going to be big." I spent that night staring at the ceiling, realizing that the war was just beginning. Monday morning, I called Tom Bradley and told him to reject Sloane's settlement offer. "Are you sure? It's a good deal, Ethan." "It's a trap. She's hiring a PI to manufacture evidence against me." "Can you prove that?" "Working on it. But in the meantime, I want to go on the offensive." "What do you have in mind?" "I want to file criminal charges against all of them. Sloane for theft, Derek for fraud, Mike for conspiracy. I want to make this so public and so messy that they can't control the narrative." Tom was quiet for a moment. "That's a risky strategy. If it backfires..." "It won't backfire. I've got evidence, they've got lies. In the end, truth wins." "All right. I'll start drafting the complaints." That afternoon, I did something I'd been avoiding. I went back to the yacht club. The place went quiet when I walked in, like a saloon in an old Western movie. Conversation stopped, heads turned, and I could practically hear the whispers starting. I walked straight to the bar and ordered a beer. The bartender, a kid named Jimmy who'd always been friendly, served me with obvious discomfort. "Busy day?" I asked conversationally. "Yeah, pretty busy." "Derek around?" Jimmy glanced toward the back office. "He's in a meeting." "With who?" I probably shouldn't say." I left a 20 on the bar and walked toward Derek's office. The door was closed, but I could hear voices inside. Derek and someone else I didn't recognize. I knocked once and walked in without waiting for an answer. Derek was sitting behind his desk, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Across from him sat a thin man in a cheap suit who had to be Rick Santos, the private investigator. "Ethan," Derek said, his voice strained. "You can't just..." "Can't just what? Walk into a public business?" I looked at Santos. "You must be the PI Sloane hired. Rick Santos, right?" Santos didn't deny it. "Mr. Wade, I think you should leave." "Actually, I think I should stay. See, I've been wondering what kind of evidence you're manufacturing for my wife. Fake photos, doctored audio recordings, coached witnesses." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. You specialize in dirty divorce tricks. Problem is, this time you're working for the wrong side." Derek stood up. "Ethan, just take the settlement offer. Walk away. This doesn't have to get uglier." "Oh, but it does, Derek. See, you helped my wife steal $30,000 from me. You committed fraud. And now you're helping her frame me for crimes I didn't commit." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "I think people should know what kind of business you really run here." "You can't record us without permission," Santos said. "Actually, I can. Maine's a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of." I smiled. "Didn't your research cover that?" Derek's face went pale. "What do you want?" "I want you to confess. All of it. The affair, the fraud, the plan to frame me, on camera." "Go to hell." "Wrong answer." I kept recording. "Derek Prentiss, owner of Prentiss Yacht Sales, you had an affair with my wife Sloane Wade and accepted fraudulent consulting payments from her using marital funds. Is that correct?" "I'm not saying anything else." "Rick Santos, you're a private investigator hired to manufacture evidence against me in divorce proceedings. Is that correct?" Santos stood up. "We're done here." Actually, we're just getting started. I pocketed my phone. Derek, your wife's back from visiting her mother, right? How do you think she'll react when she finds out about the affair? About the money? Derek's tan face went gray. You wouldn't. Try me. Rick, how do you think the state licensing board will react when they find out you're manufacturing evidence again? Third strike, isn't it? Both men looked like they wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. Derek, you're going to call your lawyer and confess to everything. The affair, the fraud, all of it. Rick, you're going to turn over every piece of fake evidence you've created and testify about who hired you to create it. And if we don't? Santos asked. Then I release this recording to every news outlet in Maine, along with all the evidence I've collected. Derek, your business will be destroyed and your marriage will be over. Rick, your license will be revoked and you'll probably face criminal charges. Derek sat down heavily. You bastard. No, Derek. I'm just a guy who got tired of being screwed over. I walked out through the yacht club, leaving their silence behind me. Later, Tom called. Derek's lawyer wanted a confession for immunity, and it would drag Santos into the evidence scheme. Sloane went quiet, then withdrew her settlement offer. Wednesday morning, Hal told me to turn on Channel 8. A reporter stood outside the club, announcing fraud and adultery allegations, bedtime, money, betrayal, spreading across Maine by noon. Thursday, Sloane begged to talk. We met at the marina under a restraining order's rules. She looked wrecked and apologized. Oh, I didn't comfort her. I told her consequences were next, then walked away.